This is part 2 of a 2-part podcast.
Hey, this is T. Blankenship. Are you a fan of pie? Where there's pie at Permies.com. This pie grants the user secret access. You also get free things like videos of Wheaton Labs, the ability to add 2 thumbs up to posts, and more. To get pie, go to Permies.com/pie to get the inside scoop of what pie can do for you. Again, that is Permies.com/pie.
Okay. Clay, you're up.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with what Esther had said earlier. A lot of my time was spent harvesting. I didn't do GAMCOD this past year, but I did grow probably about a GAMCOD's worth of space. And I spent maybe a few hours planting. I have sprinklers, and I literally flip a light switch and they come on. And so most of my time, I didn't spend any time weeding or caring about that stuff. And I had a decent crop, several decent crops and decent harvests. So no, I don't think it takes an enormous amount of time. I did see in the chat that, there might be benefit. Folks think there might be benefit to spending more time, and you might grow more if you did choose to spend more time. But I think that there's a level of diminishing return there, and so if you take a plot and you spend 0 time other than planting and harvesting, and then compare that to the effort that you spend on the same plants where you are meticulous, I wonder how much more you would get, and if you would then look at that and say, okay, that time doesn't equate to enough return for me to continue doing that in the future.
So I agree with everything, and it can be incredibly easy. And I hope that that's the thing that we end up documenting is the whole. It takes so little time. It's just a tiny amount of time in order to be able to do this. Of course, there is the caveat of paying attention and caring about it does matter. So, all right, Tim, you're up.
Everyone had really good points. I think the only thing that I have to add with my plan for GAMCOD, the most work, which is still only a little bit, will be at the very start to establish the bed. And it's my hope after that fact, it's just maintenance. So hearing about 4 hours maybe to get the bed established, I think that seems more than reasonable. And then just the weekly, I'm hoping to do something like a weekly schedule, not necessarily a daily, of just maintenance items to get a harvest. We will see.
I would think every 3 weeks or so, a person might spend something like 20 minutes doing a little chop and drop mulch. And the whole GAMCOD system does allow for a ghost acre. So if you want to have this whole acre over here growing a whole bunch of something that you use as fertilizer or mulch or something, that's all cool. And that could add some time to it. But even still, I think that the total amount of time is going to be pretty small.
A minimal investment.
Next up. Oh, you got something else, Mike?
I was just going to mention one little thing. It seems like Tim, one thing we might have going for us is that occasionally irrigation comes out of these big puffy white things. So I never watered my garden all last year.
Wow.
And I also went to Wheaton Labs for a month. Just nothing was done on it. So part of my setup was knowing I was going to be gone and knowing I wouldn't be there to water it. It isn't always like that, but I've built that into my garden plan. So we might have an advantage there. They get more sun though.
I hope so.
Oh, excellent point. That is an excellent point. So basically, it mitigates the Achilles heel we talked about earlier that Rebekah brought up, which is that you got to kind of be paying attention to know when to. Like you can't just skip your watering when it's dirt. if you've got good soil, mulch, hugelkultur, yeah, you can skip worrying about the watering completely. But Mike, it sounds like you've got enough rainfall throughout the growing season that you don't even have to do any of that. You probably have some mulch laid down though.
Yeah, I mulched a lot, and we got a lot of rain last year, so it was almost too much. I was too wet, and I think I had some crop failure due to it.
Okay. The next misnomer number 4, gardening requires an established garden. So, of course, this whole thing that we're doing is we're saying it's from dirt. We're going to grow 1 million calories on dirt. And so, however, I think maybe a lot of people that would have never gardened before, they don't know the difference between dirt and soil. And so that would be part of what we're going to teach them. But every GAMCOD video that ends up in the movie is going to have a demonstration of like, see, this is dirt. And hopefully it'll also have a little bit of like, see over there, I'm growing a garden that's roughly the same size on soil. And see how it does. I don't have to work as hard. It's all easy. But, this project is about dirt. Mike?
Yep. And that's the whole point of GAMCOD, is that we're all building gardens from nothing. We're creating these gardens to show that anybody can start a garden even on dirt if you're stuck with it. So, yeah, I think just by doing GAMCOD, we're dispelling the idea that you need to have a garden to do this, because many of us already have gardens, and we're doing this on extra ground just to start from scratch, just like anyone else would have to.
I'm hoping that we get at least one GAMCOD submission that starts from a lawn. Like here's a big lawn. Oh, and Rebekah's waving her hand. Okay. And so
I did.
All right.
Mine was from a lawn. What do you want it out?
Okay. All right. Well, first, let's have you begin with the misnomer. Gardening requires an established garden.
Oh, it does not. I grew my GAMCOD garden from my lawn.
Now, I think there's 2 general approaches. One is to turn your lawn, like to rototill your lawn. And the other would be to just smother your lawn. And there are people that have horrible recipes for smothering a lawn that I hope nobody in the GAMCOD project will ever attempt. I think that there's ways that are easy and delightful. But one could also rip up a lawn in order to build a hugelkultur bed. What did you do, Rebekah?
So I spent a lot more time than Mike to establish my garden, because instead of using a rototiller, I dug it by hand to get all of the grass, roots out. And I don't think that was worth it, because a lot of the grass roots grew back in by the end of the season. And so I think I would do it differently this year and smother it with mulch.
Yeah, smother with mulch. I think when you're starting with a lawn, first of all, I'm going to advocate hugelkultur every single time. But I also respect that there's going to probably be, most of the GAMCOD submissions are not going to use hugelkultur. And that's fine. But I prefer the idea that it's smothered with mulch and only mulch. I believe I've detailed somewhere that use of any cardboard or newspaper is forbidden in the GAMCOD project. I hope that I've got that clearly documented. There are some forbidden things, and it's because I want to be able to show it can be done without those things. And there's a lot of people that think that you have to use cardboard or newspaper to smother, and it's no, you don't. But you attempted to dig, and you paid the price, because those grasses are persistent. They've stored up a lot of carbohydrate, and they're ready to take over despite your efforts, which is hilarious. So, but the big thing, I love that you started with the lawn though. That one, because if nothing else with the lawn, it is in effect, it's a type of organic matter that you're starting off with. So it's not exactly soil. Most lawns are on dirt, but when the sod starts to decompose, it feeds the soil. All you got to do is to get it to decompose.
Yeah.
So, Rebekah, do you have anything else about gardening requires an established garden? Okay. Stephen, you're up.
Gardening does not require an established garden. I tried to document as well as possible our process of building a hugel for our particular GAMCOD plot. And it was an 8 by 25 mound of dirt with logs interspersed in between. And that's what we started with. It didn't look like much after that first week. Things really hadn't taken off, but then soon the sunchokes picked up. And by the end of the season, the one entire side was covered with pumpkin. So if, I don't know, I love what Rebekah had said about consistency, keeping an eye on it. And one of the things that Paul says all the time about gardening is the best fertilizer is the gardener's shadow. And he may have said that already, and I just missed it because I wasn't in for the whole call. But that's what's required for a garden. We had silty clay, like dirt that we dug out of the bottom of a pit. Again, this is all documented in the videos I've submitted about our first effort. And we're probably going to grab the dirt from the same spot for this coming season. And there was nothing special about that. There was nothing growing in it prior to that, We just like put a couple logs in between the layers and maybe a blob of mulch here, a blob of kitchen scraps here. And then that was it. There were no other, like special things. Again, didn't go to Home Depot for any of it. Didn't have to pick up a bag of manure or humus or anything like that. It was just, we put a bunch of elbow grease in there. That was essentially it.
Cool. Oh, look, there's me and Lamar. So, first, I want to say that the best fertilizer is the gardener's shadow. That's something I'm glad to echo. I have no memory of where that came from. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that's hundreds of years old, that expression. So, Clay, gardening requires an established garden.
Yeah, I also agree with what other folks have said. No, I turned my lawn into a couple hugelkultur beds, and had an awesome garden the first year and an even better one the next. So, very much, no, you can get started this season. Go ahead and don't let that stop you, and get something in the ground. Just plant, as I've heard it said, and see what happens, but also kind of expect something good to happen with that too. I think, Tim.
Are you planning this year to make another hugel in the lawn, or?
I am very tempted. I have to. I am nervous, kind of going back to the soil point about my lawn might be too much soil to count. I'll have to do some tests and see. But that's whether it's my lawn or the blank spot in my neighbor's area, I have the wood. I cut down some trees, and so I'm thinking that's at least for one of my plots. I'll try and do some hugelkultur, kind of similar to what Stephen did, I think, this year at the Allerton Abbey spot.
I feel like I gotta fess up. I'm planning on doing a spot in my lawn. I think I have the opposite problem of you, Clay, as it can barely grow lawn. So it will be a fun experiment. I'm confident it is dirt. But my plan was kind of echoing Rebekah, digging the lawn. After hearing the grass came back, we might have to reevaluate the plans. But I'm thinking of going with a double dig method. And seeing what we can pull out from there.
Double dig sounds like a lot of work to me. I'm very familiar with double dig, and how the second dig is not as diggy as the first dig, but I still love the idea of something even simpler. And I also kind of feel like, as long as you got your shovel in there, why not make a hugelkultur?
True.
So,
true.
At some point in time, I'm bonkers about hugelkultur, but if you're going to do something, and Steve and I have gone over this many times, like if you've got a plot of land that is 8 feet wide, which is what Stephen did, and if you have a hugelkultur that is 8 feet tall, you've almost doubled your growing space. So you've almost doubled the amount of food that you can grow, which is kind of part of what we're shooting for. However, making a hugelkultur that's 8 feet tall is a substantial amount of work, but the payoff is for decades, which could be worth documenting. But as long as you're digging, I would suggest making it into a mound for a buffet of reasons. But then again, I'm bonkers about hugelkultur. I hope that when we're all done with GAMCOD, that the most successful GAMCOD plots are hugelkultur plots. That's my hope. All right. Anybody else got anything about gardening requires an established garden? All right. The last misnomer. Gardening provides a tiny speck of novelty nibble, not proper quantities of food. And I think that the GAMCOD plots that were done in 2024 demonstrated that is not true. The sheer volume of calories, which is a big focus of this whole project, is the calories. Not because some people grow a garden and they grow some spinach and some kale, and tomatoes are not famous for having a lot of calories per acre. So they grow some things that are fun and stuff like that, but not the giant mega calorie angle stuff. So I kind of feel like a caloric focus is important and not just a novelty nibble. So, and all right, let's start with Mike. Mike, you have any thoughts about this misnomer?
Yeah, I believe that is a misnomer as well. I wonder a side note, I wonder how much of it is related to people who do or don't cook a lot of food. So if you're cooking a lot of meals, you might be used to using things like potatoes and onions, like the historical crops of or the past 500 years, especially annual crops. So I think there's an element of, if you don't cook much, when you do a fancy little meal, maybe you just need some herbs or a tomato. So you're used to growing nibbles instead of growing the calories. So I love the focus on calories. And yeah, we showed you can grow a fair number of calories. I'm sticking either sticking potatoes I think I'm planting potatoes right there. So yeah, I got over 30 pounds of potatoes out of a fraction of, or maybe a quarter of my GAMCOD plot.
I kind of feel like you've touched on something that's really important. Some people are kind of like, they don't eat food unless it is coming out of their microwave oven or it's coming with a knock at the door, or they're at a restaurant, and that's pretty much it. Sometimes they'll buy stuff that comes in a package that they can eat as a snack, and that's kind of like 100% of all the food that they eat fits into one of those categories. And so, what we're proposing is that there would be probably some cooking involved. I mean, there are some of the foods, like strawberries, for example, you can eat those just directly off the plant. Tomatoes would be another example. But our high-calorie foods tend to require some degree of cooking. Like sunchokes would be an example. You can eat sunchokes raw, but I think most people would want to cook them. And then squash would be another. I don't even know if squash is edible when it's raw or palatable when it's raw. I've never tried to eat raw squash. But any kind of grain, except with the exception of sweet corn. Sweet corn's a grain, and you can eat that right off the stalk. You don't even have to cook it. But I don't know. I just kind of feel like a big part of what we're shooting for here with the GAMCOD. I mean, I want to start talking about apples, but not yet. So I kind of feel like, yeah, there is a certain amount of cooking involved. However, I kind of feel like the people that are going to be eating strictly at restaurants and from the microwave and things of that nature, those are not necessarily our audience. I think that there are some people that do some degree of cooking, or they are open to the idea of growing some or doing some cooking, in which case their first ever garden would be a great place to start. Can you guys think of anything that you would grow in a GAMCOD plot that you would just eat straight up, like normally?
Like lettuce and greens, I wouldn't necessarily grow them in a GAMCOD plot for the calories, but that's definitely something a lot of people would eat if they were just growing a garden.
I like radishes and turnips. And radishes are cool because you can plant them in the beginning as well as the end of the growing season and still get a good yield from the plants. That's what I would do.
Yeah. Still, all these things are, not high calorie crops, which is what we're shooting for.
Okay.
I think something as a new gardener, they say, grow what you eat, but gardens are a great opportunity to try different things and, try new recipes. I know that's something that I'm new to. I didn't grow up with a, let's say, vegetable cooking friendly family. But kind of part of the beauty of Permies is being able to ask people's favorite recipes, favorite uses for vegetables that you might not be used to, but now you can grow.
So I think that there's a lot of reasons to grow a garden, and I think that the GAMCOD movie is going to be focused on how to grow a million calories, how to grow plenty of food for your family with little effort, little money, and then but it does kind of depend on what are you going to eat, and if people are going to only eat foods that are already prepared, then gardening is going to be a bit of a challenge, and it goes into a whole other space. But Mike, do you have anything else about gardening provides a tiny speck of novelty nibble?
No, I think a lot of people believe that, and we're dispelling it.
Okay. Stephen, you got anything on this?
Anything to add to that? Well, I don't want to touch on nutrition, but I will talk about that if somebody is intensely gardening a smaller space, and this is something that Paul, while I've been on the road, I've been listening to old podcasts. So somewhere in the 270 something range, you were discussing things with Jeff Lawton back in the day. And he mentions, and you totally agree with him, that whenever you're intensely gardening a smaller space, again, not going to talk about nutrition because that's not what GAMCOD is about, but you can increase the diversity because you're spending a lot more face time essentially with that smaller space. And you can look, and also similar to what Tim was just talking about, I think, where you can have a chance to try different things. that you normally wouldn't. When somebody has spent most of their life eating corn and potatoes and wheat as part of their diet, they can diversify from that, and they can receive protein from other different types of vegetables. So that's another. I think that's another bonus for having a small garden space to work with and focusing on that. Yeah, maybe I do want to try to make kale. I've never tried to do that, or Swiss chard, or what are golden beets all about? Let me try some of those. So those are all, we tried sweet potatoes this year as a first time attempt in Montana, or at least in our section of Montana for sweet potatoes to see if they would grow. And I did look, Paul, at some of the sweet potatoes of that same variety that we grew at the grocery store. And even though there were these weird red wiggly things that were almost like, they were like an inch in diameter. They were like long deflated balloon kind of things. But they were selling those at the grocery store. So, I mean,
do you remember how much they were selling them for?
Oh, it was somewhere between $4 and $5 per pound. So, yeah. Sorry, Rebekah. Yeah. I see you choking a little bit there on that announcement. But I would say that you can experiment with diversity. Totally agree with what Tim was talking about in terms of trying new things. I think part of the requirement for, for GAMCOD is that you need at least 5 different vegetables in order to consider it a valid GAMCOD project plot. I seem to recall that number. So this is a great excuse for you to be able to check that stuff out and try something different.
Well, Grand Champion Rebekah, what are your thoughts on gardening provides a tiny speck of novelty nibble, not proper quantities of food?
Well, one of my favorite gardeners says not to grow what you are used to eating, but to find out from other gardeners in the area what grows so well you can neglect it and it'll still produce. So that requires a change, like we've been talking about. If you're just like a French fry kind of person, scrubbing up a potato is difficult, but this is even like another level up. Like sunchokes grow so well, you can cut them back and they'll still do their thing. But it requires learning a little bit more about sunchokes because, when I'm going to feed my family, I can scrub up 8 fat russets and it takes this much time. But if I'm going to feed them the same amount of calories of sunchokes, I'm going to do a lot more scrubbing, a lot more cutting, and even some different techniques. And the same goes for parsnips that grow really well for me. And so it just, for the level 1 gardener, that is a necessary shift. What can I grow a lot of, and will I eat it? And how can I eat it? And, wrapping their cooking brain around that.
I think that's a really good point. I know that we have thousands, maybe tens of thousands of walking onions growing here. Mm-hmm. And the people who come here as a cook, which would include you, Rebekah, you've been here, I believe, twice as a cook.
Yeah.
I remember this last summer, Kat was cooking something and she tried to use the walking onions. Well, she did use the walking onions several times, but she complained every time because the regular onions were like I'm gonna say 4 times easier to prepare.
Yeah, they're massive compared to a walking onion, Yeah.
But on the other hand, to grow standard onions takes a certain amount of effort.
Totally.
It's not an enormous amount of effort, but you're going to, do something. You're probably going to start from sets or something like that. To grow onions, regular onions, there's There's a little bit of work that goes into it. The great thing
Helen
about
says.
Oh, what did Helen say?
The onions like to be weeded. It takes more intense gardening because they don't do well with competition.
And
those fat onions that will feed a whole family, gotta spend more time on those. Walking onions, you can be in the field and do nothing to them all year.
Yeah, and if you do nothing to them 3 years in a row, you'll just have like 100 times more.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh man, what have I done? They've taken over everything. And so, it's like, oh no.
The ease of gardening, that has to translate into your kitchen skills. So you might grow something that's really easy and high in calories, but it's maybe going to take you more effort in the kitchen. I just saw pictures. Go ahead.
I like the idea that you might do both. You know, like when you got the gumption to grow the things that will be easy for the kitchen, then do that. And then, but if you don't get around to it, well, here's 10,000 walking onions and 800 pounds of sunchokes. And it's like, sure, the sunchokes are going to take more time to prep, and the walking onions are going to take, but you know what? Still cheaper than going to the grocery store. Now, of course, I also want to talk about, let's grow some hazelnuts and some apples and maybe some apricots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like now you've got all that ease that you're looking for combined with ease of growth, like it just keeps growing every year and you don't have to do anything except harvest. It's already there. And on top of that, I like the idea of like, let's take our potatoes. So I don't know. I think we've got a bunch of potatoes growing all over the place here that it's our fourth year of us not planting any potatoes there, but we keep pulling potatoes out of the ground right there. I mean, if you're going to not till, if you're going to not do things that destroy those potatoes from 4 years ago, they'll keep pumping out potatoes in that spot for years. At least for us, they do. So, and yes, potatoes. There was a guy, I once had dinner with a guy that was a native dude, and he was kind of an expert on being a native dude. And I remember we're doing dinner, he's like, somebody at the table said something about like, well, don't you want to eat the foods from 500 years ago? And he's like, hell no. And he said, just look at the potato. The closest thing that we add to a potato here is camas. And those things are tiny. And not only that, but it's like in order to cook them properly, it's at least a day of cooking, let alone the harvest and everything. But with potatoes, you hardly have to cook them at all. And they're delicious and they're huge. They're so easy. Potatoes are amazing. I want to thank white people for coming here and bringing us potatoes. So, camas apparently sucks. I mean, I've eaten camas. It's lovely. I've had camas when it was cooked for 2 days, and I can tell you it's delicious. But the total amount of effort per speck of camas is a lot. So potatoes, I mean, potatoes will be your potatoes. They're gonna fill in all those gaps and stuff. And camas is more of a tasty treat if somebody puts in all the time and stuff.
Have you ever wondered whether a particular book was really good or just so-so, and if you could trust the reviews online? When it comes to books related to permaculture, Permies has a large list of reviews for over 100 books. Perhaps you're considering a book for yourself or a friend, or you're just curious about what's out there. Stop by permies.com/book and take a look at the book review grid and read some honest reviews, and hopefully you'll find the next book to add to your collection.
So, now Samantha's joining us. Cool. Samantha, you did not grow a GAMCOD plot last year, but you are going to grow a GAMCOD plot this year. Is that right?
I am, and I grew one the previous year when I first moved to this house. I grew it on the lawn. So my first year in this property.
Delightful. Okay. So we were talking about gardening provides a tiny speck of novelty nibble. I don't even remember who I was asking anymore. Who needs to chip in some more on that one? Nobody?
I can pop in. Yeah, I mean, my first garden at this house was 2 years ago, and my first time ever growing carrots, and I grew over 5 pounds of carrots, and yeah, I mean, we eat carrots a lot, and I'm starting to ferment them thanks to Des, and I really. I totally disagree with it that gardening necessarily will produce only a small amount of novelty food. I think that you can grow a major percentage of your own calories if you select the things and put in just a little bit of effort. It's well worth it.
Yeah, carrots are a great example because you can eat those raw. And they're a moderate calorie food, not huge, but moderate. And I think for a GAMCOD plot, when somebody's trying to prove how many calories they can grow, I'm not sure carrots would make the cut. Maybe they would. Might sprinkle them in here and there a little bit. Tim, do you have anything to add on this last misnomer?
No, I think it was pretty well covered.
So, finishing up about the reason to do GAMCOD. Our mission is to guide level 1 people to growing food, resolving the misnomers. Then they will be at level 3, and all of our horticultural stuff seems cool. GAMCOD is a stepping stone to permaculture. So this is an attempt to grow a lot of food on dirt, demonstrating techniques that are cheap and easy. The mission is not to show off awesome level 5 to level 10 stuff. That'll all just seem crazy to people that we're trying to reach with this project. The mission is to help a level 1 person to shift from a list of stupid excuses to an actual garden. I want the submissions for this project to have a lot of focus on how simple, cheap, productive growing food can be with the worst soil. Experts showing how easy it can be. Of course, if an expert grows 2 or 3 plots and the focus is on these goals, and there's 30 seconds about, and here's my other plot where I added my special brand of magic, I think that would be cool. Maybe the second plot could be with soil instead of dirt. Or with perennials or all sorts of expansions. But those interesting things will be just a wee bit of frosting on the cake, not the main show. So, anything else about this whole thing about the reason to do GAMCOD? Nope. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the requirements for GAMCOD. So, 200 square feet. If you want to do something that's like I think Stephen did 8 feet by 25 feet, 10 feet by 20 feet. I kind of wonder if somebody might do like 4 feet by 50 feet or something like that. And just do a single raised bed or whatever. It's all cool. I don't think anybody's done a circle yet, and I think doing a big hugelkultur would be the wisest path. But I love to be shown how wrong I am. So, 200 square feet for this round of GAMCOD. We're only going to be accepting entries from places where it gets to 0 degrees Fahrenheit or colder sometime in the last 10 years. So if for the last 5 years it got down only to 15 degrees, but this one time 7 years ago it got down to 0, that's great. You're in. But for climates that are like they get down to, like the coldest they get is 20 degrees Fahrenheit in 10 years. That's much warmer, and it's a different set of circumstances. And already Mike has been saying, like, because Mike, what's the coldest you've seen in the last 10 years?
I think I want to say negative 29, something like that.
Okay, so we've had 26 below here. So I mean, and I think a person could make the case of saying, like, hey, that's not fair because it gets much colder for me than it does for some of these other people. And I kind of feel like, well, we had to draw the line somewhere. And I kind of feel like 0 degrees Fahrenheit is a pretty good line. We've had about 20 people say that they want to do GAMCOD, but they've never seen temperatures that low. And so we might circle back to them next year. But for now, for this year, we're sticking to the colder climates. So something about, 0, or the people that are the 10 below, the 20 below, stuff like that. That's going to be our peeps for now, for this project. The overall mission is to show that calories are cheap and easy. Oh, and we're calling it GAMCOD for now, but when we put the movie out, we might go with a different name. I'm not sure what that name might be, but I don't know. I like the name. I've gotten used to calling it GAMCOD. I don't know. It's a good enough name for me for now. When we originally started having these conversations, we did talk about, like, how much can you grow on a full acre? And so now we've limited it to 200 square feet. And then when somebody makes a submission, we say, well, if you grew it on a full acre, it would be this many calories. And so I'm comfortable doing that. And I think we're going to get a lot more people submitting attempts now. And that's what we want. Let's see. Hoping to get 100 people or more that will submit video for this project. And we'll probably pick the best 6, but maybe it'll be the best 5, the best 7, something around there. It depends on what we see. Also, we've touched on the idea that each individual can grow more than one plot. Like they might grow 3 different plots that are all GAMCOD, and they want to do their best plot. Because why not? They're going to grow a bunch of food anyway. And so let's break it into GAMCOD plots and see which one does the best. Let's see. The core of this is to show 6 great gardeners demonstrating great permaculture gardening practices to people that have never gardened before. The way is for the observers to conclude that gardening is cheap, easy, and productive. Calories per acre is the core. So that's when we're going through and selecting the video that we're going to use for the movie. There's probably going to be a dozen different criteria. I mean, the quality of the audio and video is going to be part of it. The ability to describe what you're doing will be part of it. But when it comes to the actual GAMCOD plot, the number one thing is going to be the calories grown. Like those, like we have 100. If we end up with a video from 100 different people at the very end, then and we're looking through them, I suspect that we're going to be focused. We're going to, first eliminate the bottom 60 people with the lowest calories, and we'll only look at the top 40 people with the most calories. That's my guess at this time. So calories is going to be the core of the project, the calories per acre. Let's see, 200 square feet must be clearly marked out at the start. It must be one contiguous piece, probably a rectangle or a circle. And I'm going to say I should probably change that from probably to definitely a rectangle or a circle. Start with a dirt patch or lawn on dirt. Let's see. Note that 7 by 28 is less than 200 square feet and could hold a 7-foot tall hugelkultur. For this first attempt at a movie project, if your garden is an area that went to 0 degrees F or colder in the last 10 years, then it qualifies. Okay, already covered that. At least 5 crops that are generally known as food. You can find the foods in the organic grocery. No soy. Now, I know that it seems like every time I say no soy, I get people challenging me on that. And I imagine everybody on this call understands my thing about no soy. And I think we could probably fill an entire podcast talking about why not soy. But mostly political stuff. Monsanto owns all soy, no matter if you've been keeping the seed in your family for 200 generations or something. Monsanto still owns it. That's how patents work, and they have the patent on all soy. And so, and then people want to start talking about like their GMO soy and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, they own that and the non-GMO soy, any soy, all of it. And then we could bring in the points that Mark Shepard makes about how soy is not good for you. It's basically a poison. And it's like whether you fermented it or not. And it's kind of like, that's a whole other angle. But I don't want to. So, all right, bottom line is not going to count soy. No soy. Polyculture is strongly encouraged. Optional, an additional 200 square foot plot that is planted with perennials. A summary in late summer about what the productivity might be like in 5 years and 10 years. That'd be cool. Gardeners are encouraged to use a ghost acre, a place where mulches and fertilizers are grown outside of the 200 square feet. Details about mulches and importing seeds, tubers, bulbs here. So there's a link from the GAMCOD 2025 thread to go and read more about mulches and fertilizers and growing your own. We basically want you to not import stuff. Okay, I'm kind of cruising through a lot of different things at once, but how about if I stop right there? For any of the things I've mentioned so far, does anybody have any comments about any of that? Doesn't look like a lot of activity other than Samantha touching her nose. Rebekah, you're...
One thing that made this project harder for me this year was to not put in anything outside of my yard or 500 feet or whatever was the limit. And I usually use mulches from all over my town, which is like a mile. You know, it's not a big space. It's not intense to bring stuff from that far away. That would make a better garden for sure with better results.
Which I think would be a great thing to say into the video. However, I'm going to say that I have my reasons for it. I mean, there's going to be you attempting to submit to GAMCOD, to the movie, and bringing in materials. But then, like, if we've got somebody else who's going to attempt to submit GAMCOD stuff and they were to have brought in materials from more than 500 feet away, is it plausible that they brought in persistent herbicides? Is it plausible that they, took some other shortcuts, that the manure that they brought in was from a non-organic source and all that implies, etc.? And so I've drawn these lines for a bunch of different reasons. Another important reason, I think, is that I don't want the viewer to think that they cannot grow a garden unless they have access to the resources you have access to. I like the idea that they can grow a garden, provided that there is some stuff nearby. So like Thomas Elpel author of Botany in a Day, wrote to me, and he says he wants to do GAMCOD. And he says he wants to do it near a sheep shed that he has where there's a lot of sheep manure. And I'm kind of feeling like, edge case. Because, are the viewers going to say, like, I can't grow food unless I have sheep poop? And you might think, nobody's going to think that. And I will need to correct that. Pretty much everybody is going to think that. Like with rocket mass heaters, it's bizarre how I try to come up with the most boring looking rocket mass heaters, because I have heard people say that they've seen rocket mass heaters that were shaped like a dragon because they were working with cob. Why not make it beautiful? And then people were like, I can't have a rocket mass heater because I'm not able to make it look like a dragon. And it's like, this becomes, and this is the thing that the GAMCOD project is about, eliminating stupid excuses. And so I'm concerned about that. Now, of course, if he submits 2 different GAMCOD plots, one with poopies and one without, we'll probably go with the one without. And then if we're going to use the one with because he refused to do anything else, I kind of feel like, well, that's okay, provided that we have all the other GAMCOD plots that are doing it without manures. So a person at the end can say, so I can do this without manures, but if I do have manures, it might be, better. Now, of course, then we kind of get into the problem of some people don't want to even try unless they can do the best. And so I don't have manure, so I'm not even going to try. So yeah, it's a very messed up, wackadoodle, complicated thing, which when you're a level 5 gardener, it's stupid. But, if we're trying to address the level 1 excuses, it's critical. So, Rebekah, I lay this at your feet. Do you agree with my analysis? There was an eye roll. There was an eye roll. People, we have an eye roll. She's trying to figure out how to word this.
I think that resourcefulness in your neighborhood is a permy skill that is important. And if you're gathering leaves from your neighbors or grass clippings, I feel like that's really useful.
I think everything you say is true, and everything I will say to say don't do it is also true. Because if you're gathering leaves from neighbors, leaves or grasses from neighbors that have been treated with persistent herbicides, well, then it's a terrible idea.
That's true. So you have to know your neighbor. What?
Oh, I know my neighbor so good. My neighbor is beautiful, and my neighbor dresses so sharp, and my neighbor, so therefore, I want to interact with my neighbor so much that I'm sure all their stuff is great. Is it knowing your neighbor that makes it so that it doesn't have persistent herbicides?
It's talking to your neighbor and, having a dialogue.
Did you see the Wonka movie? That was terrific. Now I want your mulches. But no, the thing is that you got to be able to figure out whether or not that material has any persistent herbicides that has been carried. Was there any persistent herbicide that touched any of this in the last 5 years, 10 years? Because persistent herbicides have a half-life of 7 to 11 years.
While I know that is a really big concern for legitimate reasons, I think most level 1 gardeners, that's like way over their head.
And which is why I think that we need to exclude that at this time. and later we can explore talking about that. I mean, trying to eliminate persistent herbicides from your mulches and also buying topsoil, then we're getting well into level 3, level 4 conversations. And it's like, okay, let's make this really easy to understand. So, Rebekah, have I mitigated? I mean, everything you're saying is true, and everything I am saying is also true.
Yes.
Okay. And so,
what I hear you saying is, Rebekah, this is my competition, and if you want to do it, you must play by the rules. And I nod my head and say, yes.
Okay, good. And at the same time, this is the moment to explore the rules.
Okay.
And keep in mind that for 3 or 4 years now, we've been talking about GAMCOD, and people have challenged me on every speck of this already.
Totally.
So I am well prepared to address every question you have, which is why we're recording all this right now. So bring it. Come on, bring it. So let me back up a bit. I've mentioned a bunch of the rules so far, and there's the whole thing about the ghost acre, and you can't bring stuff from more than 500 feet away. And it's like, okay, do you have anything else along any of the things I've mentioned so far? Because I thought that was a good point to bring up. I could make a more glorious garden if I could bring in organic matter from farther away. Like I've got a neighbor that lives half a mile away, all organic, and they have leaves. And another one has a sawmill, and it's all organic, and I can get the sawdust. And there's another one that's all organic, and it's horse poopies. And it's like, oh, if I could get to all of those things, I could do a garden that's so much more glorious. That is all true. And I would say this is level 4 gardening that we're talking about when you're attempting to dodge persistent herbicides, which would destroy your garden. So, all right. Anything about any of the other bits that I brought up so far? Rebekah? No, you look content. Okay, no, she's good. Anybody else want to address any of the other things I've brought up so far?
I don't have a question or a contest or anything like that. But I have a day's worth of driving ahead of me, and the weather's not growing any better. So unfortunately, I have to step out. So sorry about that, everybody. I will catch you later. Catch you at another time.
Drive safe.
Thanks for being here.
Never.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay. The next item we have is we want to see practices far above organic. The wish is for the final movie to advocate not buying stuff and not risking the import of things that could be toxic. So, which is kind of what we were touching on. It's like, I think that a level 1 gardener is going to accidentally import toxic stuff. Oops. And so, all right, let's show them a simple way to do it where they don't import anything. That way they can be certain that they're not importing toxins into their gardening project. Unlimited irrigation. So explain how this is critical for building the soil, so in the future you won't need as much irrigation. I think that you can build soil without any irrigation whatsoever. It's entirely doable. And of course, Mike talked earlier in this thing about how he didn't use any irrigation at all on his GAMCOD plot in 2024. At the same time, I want to open it up and say everybody can use as much irrigation as they want. Now, I would think that a skilled gardener is not going to overwater. A skilled gardener is going to demonstrate watering enough, but not too much. And of course, ultra skilled like Mike are going to demonstrate how they can use dirt and grow a garden without using any irrigation whatsoever. But it would be helpful to mention the rain that happened through the year. And I think the people who do use the irrigation might point out, we haven't seen any rain for 2 months, so we're irrigating. Plus, not to mention the fact that a lot of times, I think when you have sunchokes on the top, they're very drought resistant. But if they start to wilt, that the water level is low. And so, better get some water on there. Those sunchokes look pretty pathetic. All right. Keep track of total time put in. Try to keep this low. Total money spent. Try to keep this low. Total money saved in groceries. Try to keep this high. We want people who watch the movie to know to their core that gardening is easy, delightful, productive, thrifty, and yummy. So any way that can be conveyed in the movie is terrific. Ooh, okay, here's the stuff about money. So we will put together a movie, and then we will then attempt to do a Kickstarter for the movie. But for whatever the final movie is, anybody who submits video that gets used, we will pay $400 per minute used in the movie. And so this means that if we use 30 minutes of video in the final movie, the payout will be $12,000. So further is that for big names, and I think down below I list what the names are, but I'm open to maybe a couple of others. But we'll get paid double. And anybody that is doing it at Wheaton Labs, so whether you're a boot or an ant or deep roots or a sepper or whatever you're doing, and I wouldn't be surprised if Samantha, who pops out here every couple of months, might pop out and cobble together a bit of a garden and then come back in a couple of months to keep it going or something. I don't know. Yeah. And make her own little plot. Maybe Clay's been out here a few times. Maybe he'll do something like that as well. Mm-hmm. Mike has been out here many times, but he tends to be more of a come out once a year kind of a guy. Plus, but anyway, it could happen. I don't know. But if you do it here, the pay is double. And Rebekah's been out here many times too. In fact, Rebekah, you were a boot for one whole week once, a long time ago. And so, but if you do a plot here, popping out once in a while, the pay would be double if that video gets used. So, $24,000 if 30 minutes are used. So, all right, those are the beginning notes that I have. Let's see, from the big names, Mark Shepard says he's going to do it. Joseph Lofthouse, the expert on landrace gardening, says he's going to do it. And Thomas Elpel says he's going to do it. Helen Attow wrote to say maybe. She's got a lot on her plate this upcoming year, but she might do it. All right. There, I said a lot of stuff. Has anybody got any comments on all the things I just said? Anybody? Mike?
Yeah, one question. If I presume none of us are the 12 bigs you're talking about, right?
That is true. That is true.
Okay, second question. If one of them submits some wonderful footage, puts a lot of work into it, but they didn't quite read the rules exactly as well as we did, and they maybe do something that doesn't meet the requirements, are they held to the same standards as us then too?
Probably. I think so. I mean, I like Mark Shepard is amazing. And I have only visited with him in person a couple of times. And my experience is that when talking to him, I'll say something, and then his response almost always begins with the word "but." So when I wrote to him about GAMCOD, he seemed genuinely enthusiastic, and we exchanged some emails, and I talked about the why, and I feel like he really gets it. He really understands and why there's the limitations and lines are drawn and things like that. And he appreciates it. And of course, he's already thinking, and I can't help but think he's going to do this, perennial systems are vastly superior, always. And he's right. He's absolutely right. And so will he still submit a proper GAMCOD plot that might be, like, for example, sunchokes are perennials, and they are the biggest calorie producer. But is he going to try to submit perennial plots and say, this is what GAMCOD should be, or something like that? I suspect he's not. I've already talked to him about it, but it is possible. And so you're right. If we've got Mark Shepard giving it a stab, do we kind of show Mark's stab and then say, yeah, but it didn't really, or something? I'm not sure. I mean, this is so much easier to answer after all the footage has been received and we can look at it and see. I mean, I don't know if some handsome gal does the whole thing and she's completely naked the whole time. Are we going to use that footage even though it didn't quite meet other requirements? And it's like, I don't know. And if we get somebody who didn't quite meet some requirement, but boy, they took amazing videography, are we going to use that? I don't think so, but maybe. I mean, if we get like 7 submissions and we can barely have enough to put a movie together, we'll probably be a lot less picky than if we get 300. So, I don't know.
Maybe sauce. Got it. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the lines that I have drawn are very important, and I'm prepared to defend my lines. But at the same time, what do I do if I get only 7 submissions and 4 of them don't meet the requirements? And I want to, do I put together a movie? Do I wait another year? What's going to be the play? And so, I don't have a clear answer for that. Does this help answer your question? I think you've asked a very good, simple question, and I've given you a relatively squishy answer.
Yep, that's about what I expected, so good work.
I hope that we get so many good submissions that if somebody submits something that does not qualify, that we will just instantly reject it. And it's like, I don't know, I could have been more clear. So, all right. So Andreas is sharing a message. How will Mark Shepard live up to the dirt requirement? It's going to be pretty pure soil at their place now. I imagine Mark Shepard still has some patches of dirt. And I wouldn't be surprised if he knows of neighbors that have patches of dirt. Mark Shepard, I think, Mark Shepard definitely knows the difference between dirt and soil. And I think that he would be very jazzed. I think he'd like to be able to show off how to do this because he's a pro. And so he knows the difference. He will find a way. And I think he would be excited to do that part of it, to demonstrate. But Mike's also got a point. It's possible that Mark would be like, that's just dumb, so I skipped it. And it's like, seems unlikely, but I suppose it's possible. All right. Anybody else have any questions about any of this? No? So, I think at this point in time, I'm ready to kind of wrap up. I mean, it's only been 3 hours we've been doing this. And I think we've kind of really covered a lot of good content. And I'm excited about making this movie. I'm excited for people to try out this whole project and submit pictures and videos and stuff. I know that I thoroughly enjoyed seeing the results from this year, but I think we had three successes where only one of them met the requirements. And so it's like kind of hard to make a movie out of that. And so it's like, okay, let's try it again. But it's like, am I doing that right? Were there 3 people that I think there was a 4th person that made it to the finish line, but what they submitted, the results weren't very good. It was like a 10th of the food that what other people were reporting. But I'd love to see something. I'd like to see a lot more. And so to that end, the amount of payout is, I think 4 times greater now. So a guy we refer to as the benefactor sent me a giant bale of money because he's so jazzed about the entire GAMCOD project. So now our payout per minute is 4 times bigger than what it was a year ago. Hopefully this will entice a lot more people to submit. And so, but I'm excited about it. I think that this project it's finally happening. This is going to be the year, I think. After all these years of dilly-dallying with all kinds of different flavors of GAMCOD, I think we're finally going to see it happen. Anybody got any other questions, comments, thoughts about the GAMCOD project for 2025? All right.
Bring it on.
If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at permies.com, where we talk about gardening, homesteading, and permaculture all the time.
Thank you.
Put Paul's brain on your plot. Do you have a hunk of land but don't know where to start? Do you have a world-changing permaculture idea and you need some feedback? Do you feel like the guy in overalls may inexplicably hold the keys to all your wildest permaculture and homesteading dreams? Well, you're probably wrong. But if you want to give it a go anyway, you can hire Paul for a consultation. He will be all yours for a whole entire hour. Schedule your Paulversation today at permies.com/consult. permies.com/consult.